Yep, there you go.
Hello. Today I want to tell you the story of an orca whale named Talika. He's the largest captive orca in history at 12,500 pounds and stretching over 22 feet long. Talika was captured from the wild from his family when he was 2 years old, and he was held in a tank in Iceland for over a year until he could be transported to a marine park in Canada. Once he arrived there, he was forced to perform 8 times a day, 7 days a week. During the times when he was not performing, 14 hours a day, he was shoved into a tank that was only 35 feet deep with 2 other aggressive female whales where he was attacked almost daily. The stress of performing in his tiny tank even gave him ulcers. In 1991, a trainer fell into the tank with the 3 orcas, and she was attacked by all 3 of them and ultimately drowned. The park was shut down because of the death, and Talika was put up for sale. SeaWorld quickly jumped at the opportunity to own the largest whale ever to be in captivity. They purchased him and began to subject him to intensive breeding. Today, 54% of all orcas in captivity are related to Talika. The continued stress of incompatible pairings, performing every day, small tanks, continued to affect Talika's behavior. And unfortunately, 2 other trainers have been brutally attacked and killed by Talika since his arrival in SeaWorld in 1991. After the most recent attack and murder of Dawn, they confined Talika to this tiny tank up in the corner where his tail and nose touched each side. He was there for a year where he would just float listlessly every day. After a year, instead of taking care of him the way that he needed to be taken care of, they put him back into performance despite objections from the entire community. He's been performing now for 3 more years, and he still exhibits aggressive behaviors every day. Talika's story represents 2 major issues with captivity. The first is human safety. Staff and trainers, as well as spectators, are exposed to his violence and any orca's violence every day. The poor treatment and living conditions is what's influencing these whales to these aggressive behaviors. And finally, the mortality rate and conservation of the species for orcas in captivity is devastating. Since 1961, 193 documented orcas have been captive, and today only 154 of them have already died. Animal activists, these practices have been accepted for a long time because of the what was thought to be research and rehabilitation benefits of having whales in captivity. As more and more research is being done, however, the research done in captivity is hardly revealing about the wild species, and rehabilitation efforts are being found to only benefit the amusement parks. They're only rehabilitating the animals that will be able to perform again. Many of the facilities holding the orca whales are unable to meet the needs of the complex creatures due to size or funding. Efforts are being made by these and other organizations all over the world to help these animals. The Humane Society of the United States, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and the World Society for the Protection of Animals are huge contenders in this game right now, and you can help too. Animal activists all over the world petition for animal rights every single day, but right now orcas are kind of a hot topic. You're probably wondering why, and why should you care? First reason you should care is for the whales. Their living quarters are completely inadequate. Most of the time they're in concrete tanks with dangerous edges and gates, not nearly enough water and space, and they're also chemically treated to mimic the ocean's makeup. Sometimes, in the best case scenario, they're stored in sea pens, but this is an issue as well due to things like hurricanes, throwing debris into the sea pens and endangering the whales. And the risk for escape. If a captive whale were to escape a sea pen, it would die within days because they don't know how to take care of themselves. These animals are also subjected to extreme levels of stress, most of which is during the initial capture, and transport if they're moved from one park to another. Many sea mammals die within 5 days of capture or transport just because of the extreme levels of stress that it puts them under. They're incompatibly paired with other animals, such as the instance of Tolika with the 2 aggressive female whales, and they're forced to partake in unnatural social interactions with trainers and up to 10 performances every single day. You should also care for the species. Research shows that orcas can live at least 2.5 times longer in the wild than they can in captivity. And there's limitations on the research and education we can get and receive of captive orcas. Behaviors of the orcas in captivity is much different than they would behave in the wild, especially if they're born in captivity. We just cannot observe natural behaviors of orcas if they're not in their natural environment. And finally, you should care for the humans. Exposure to orcas is a risk to trainers, staff, and spectators. Some of the common issues that are seen with these interactions are skin rash and irritation and respiratory conditions. Also injuries such as lacerations and broken bones. The U.S. Marine Mammal Commission did a survey that showed that more than half of all trainers and staff associated with orca whales have been injured in some way at some point in time. And finally, death. Don Granchell, Daniel Dukes, and Kelty Byrne were all killed at the hands of an orca whale under extreme stress. So the risks to the animals and the humans extremely outweigh the entertainment value and the revenue that is potentially generated from these parks. But what does it mean? What will it mean if the orcas get released? The future of the orca would be brighter. Currently captive orcas would be returned to the wild if possible, and if not, they'd be retired from entertainment and placed in sea pens. The lifespan of an average captive orca would even double, just forgetting the ones that get released back into the wild. So ultimately, we would be able to re-increase the orca population. We would have a greater educational and research benefit observing them in the wild, and today's technology, such as biopsy darts, electronic tagging, and underwater cameras makes that possible. We can get a greater understanding of their natural behavior with these technologies. And like I've said many times already, we lessen the risk for humans. There has not been a single documented death to a human by a wild orca and only 1 reported injury, where there's almost 600 injuries reported every year by whales in sea parks all over the world. So if this affects you like it affects me, you're probably wondering, what can you do? You're just one person. You don't have any say in what the parks do. But there's a lot that you can do to help. The first thing that you can do is learn and teach. You should all watch the documentary Blackfish that was recently released and learn the story of the devastating life of Tolika and other orcas as well. The freedom of the orcas is a pretty hot topic in the news right now, so you would want to keep up on the current events surrounding these bills and spread the knowledge. Tell somebody about this presentation, tell somebody about Blackfish if you watch it. Just share what you know and get other people involved as well. The second thing you can do is to support the organizations that do have the means to fight the battle. The Humane Society, PETA, and the World Society for the Protection of Animals. Do not support organizations such as SeaWorld and other marine amusement parks by purchasing tickets to those shows. And do support organizations that responsibly rehabilitate and educate the general public about marine life, such as the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California. And finally, petition to enact the Orca Welfare and Safety Act, which is currently proposed in California. What is the bill? It would end performance entertainment of all orcas in California. It would end all captive breeding programs. It would end the import and export of orcas in the state. It would retire currently captive whales to sea pens and allow them to be on display but not perform. And it would limit the human interaction for public safety. And finally, it would return captives to the wild when and if possible. To conclude, all of these parks are focusing on entertainment value over the mammal welfare and safety. So you can join the global effort to end the abuse But what would be your motivation? Is it the mortality rate? The lifespan of an orca in the wild would be at least 60 years and up to 100. The average lifespan of an orca in captivity is only 9 years. Is it the inhumane living conditions? Inadequate space, a stressful environment, forced to breed and train constantly? Collapsed dorsal fins from being forced to swim in circles day in and day out is on almost every single orca whale in captivity, and not a single documented whale in the wild. This whale was gravely injured by a sharp edge in his tank and forced to perform, and not given the medical treatment that he needed to heal. Or is it for the humans? These 3 people can't go home to their families anymore because they were exposed to an animal that they should have never been exposed to in the first place. Dawn Rancho was only 40 years old and she died in 2010. Kelsey Burns was only 20. She just started training at the Marine Park in Canada when she died. And Daniel Dukes wasn't even a trainer. He was a visitor that fell into the tank and he was drowned by Tolika. Oops. So, whatever your reason is, you should act right now. The petition is extremely easy. You go to this website, you enter your name, your email, and your zip code, and that's it. The goal of the petition was to get 1.25 million signatures, and they have 93% of that already. So if you go log on today, you can help get them to that 100% as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.